Today we are going to draft our very own bespoke pair of sweatpants. As you can see in the image next to me right here, we're going to use our block that we drafted last week and we're going to adapt it just to create a really simple pair of sweatpants or jogging bottoms, whatever you'd like to call them. They're going to have a nice elasticated waist, elasticated cuff, and they're going to have slightly more ease around the legs compared to our original block. I'm Izzy at Minerva and I'm going to be talking you through how to adapt your block to create this specific design style. Now obviously you can use this as a starting point to then go and tweak it and change it and to add more volume, to add less, take away the elastic at the cuff, whatever you want to do, you can then change that. So I hope this is really inspirational for you today. As you follow along, you're going to need your standard pattern drafting tools listed next to me here. You'll notice that we've got our stretch jersey trouser block there, and that's the one we drafted last week. Today I'm wearing a V-neck jersey top, which I drafted a couple of weeks ago in this series, and we were looking at how to create a jersey block for your top only. So do take a look at that if you're interested in recreating this look. Okay, so in front of me here, I've got the back and the front trouser. You'll notice the back kind of angles up as we drafted it before. And on our blocks, all I've done is I've just mirrored the front. It was kind of, here, wasn't it before, but we've mirrored it over and it's now over here. So this is the front and this is the back. Your block is going to look different to this one that you're seeing on the screen because this is my bespoke body block and everyone's body is different, so please don't expect it to look exactly the same. However, the principles I'm going to demonstrate today can be applied to your block in the same way that I do them to mine. The very first thing I'm going to do is to move the back block so it lines up with the front, just like that. The next thing I'm going to do is lower the waist location by 5 centimeters. The reason why I'm going to do this is because most sweatpants or joggers have a waistband that is sort of not low rise completely, but just doesn't usually sit on the natural waist. So that's what I want to do. However, you could leave your waist exactly where it is if you prefer that natural waist sweatband look. So working along the waistline, I'm just going to draw a line that is 5 centimeters offset from the waist on the back and then also on the front. Remove that unnecessary volume. The next thing I'm going to do is to add a 6 centimeter casing, and that's simply because I want to put a nice big bit of chunky elastic up at the top where the waistband is. My elastic is 5 centimeters deep, so I've just added on an extra centimeter for the casing just so that there's plenty space in there for the elastic to thread through. So now at the top up here, all I've done is I've combined our new waistline there, and I've actually just taken out, I'm going to remove those lines at that point to create one massive leg piece, which is really fun, isn't it? I love that look. Okay, so we can do that because we're going to add elastic into the waist, which is then going to cinch it in and hold the garment up. So draw a casing that is 6 centimeters higher than your existing waistline. And I'm just finding a bit of a gentle curve up at the top, up here. Extend your centre back line up and do the same for your centre front. Wonderful, so when that casing is folded back on itself, it's going to fit my elastic really nicely. The only other thing that I want to do is to add a little buttonhole right at the very front, at the centre front, so that I can pull 2 drawstrings like all the way around the waist and through. So let's mark those on now. So working at the centre front here on the front of the trousers, mark a little reference point that is 6 centimetres below your waistline. So when you sew your casing and tuck it under, the stitch line is going to be here. So we want our little drawstring to be sitting exactly halfway between there for it to look really nice. I'm going to offset it, about 2 centimeters is absolutely fine. So around here, that's where we want it to be. And so then just draw in a 2 centimeter long little buttonhole. I want to shorten my block by 6 centimeters. That's because I don't want the trouser legs to go all the way down to the floor. I just want them to kind of sit along my ankle really nicely. So I'm actually just going to raise up my trousers by 6 centimeters. So working along the floor line down here, just draw a line that is 6 centimeters above your floor line. Perfect. And that becomes your new hemline effectively. The next thing we want to do is to widen the legs. We want to keep the fit around the hips and the bum really nice and as the block is originally, but then we would just want to widen it around the legs just to create a bit more of a loose silhouette. So I'm just going to widen it at the base down here, 5.5 centimetres. Whatever I do to one side, I'm just going to repeat and do to the other side to keep the increase even. Square up and down on both sides. Now up at the top up here, I do want to start widening it from the top of that curve to kind of come down to meet that junction. So I want it to be something like this now. And then I'm literally just going to try and find like a bit of a soft curve just to join those two up together nicely. Do the same on the other side. Brilliant. And then the only thing we need to annotate is that this down here is also the elastic casing. Excellent. Let's grab our tracing paper and now create our pattern pieces. We're basically just going to add a seam allowance to the entire perimeter of the pattern piece. Just like that. Okay, next let's add some notches for our knee and also for our casing location. And let's just add one for our hip line up here and the casing up at the top. It's also going to be helpful just to annotate where your buttonhole needs to go. And our grain line actually runs parallel with the sort of the side seam effectively of the trousers. It also runs perpendicular to the knee and the hip line. Now this is our jersey sweatpants trouser leg. We only need to cut two because we've got the front here and the back here. What you may find helpful is to add a double notch at the back there for the hip line. You may find it also helpful just to annotate this to say front, that's the front leg, and this is the back leg. Fantastic. Cut that out, let's cut that out of fabric and then let's sew it together and see what it looks like. With right sides together, I've pinned both the crotch seams and I'm going to sew them using our seam allowance, which is 1.5 centimetres. I'm going to do a stretch stitch all the way down. I'm going to use a lightning bolt stitch. You could use a zigzag stitch or you could do a straight stitch with stretchy thread. Lots of different ways of sewing. You could also just go straight to your overlocker, making sure that your inner stitch line on your overlocker is exactly 1.5 centimetres from the raw edge, so you're trimming off quite a lot. The next thing I'm going to do is just to apply interfacing to where my little buttonholes are going to go on both sides. Okay, so we've added the interfacing at that point. Okay, so on the front of the trousers, I've marked where my two buttonholes need to go, and I'm just going to sew those now. Lovely, so those buttonholes are now sewn. Next, we just want to sew the legs together. So turn it right side out. Next, we want to pin and sew the inner leg seam. So line up the crotch seam and then just pin all the way down to one leg hem and then all the way down to the other leg hem. We've got a couple of notches which are going to help us as we pin. And obviously you could, of course, use clips for your sewing project if you prefer. Once you've pinned one side, they just continue down the other leg. So we now have something that's beginning to look like a pair of trousers. We've sewn our inseam. Obviously the side seam was all in one. This is the back facing up. Now my casing down here is 6 centimetres deep, but then I added a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance so that my stitch line would be 6 centimetres. So what I want to do is mark along here 13.5 centimetres from the raw edge, and that will be where I then fold this up to. And then just pin in place. What we're going to do now here is we've pinned it all in place, but I want to allow a little bit of an opening for my elastic. So I'm just going to note across here that I'm going to start sewing there, sew all the way around and stop sewing there so that I've got a little hole to fit my elastic into. Brilliant, so here we go, we've done our little casing and now it's time to get the elastic. So when I did my body measurements, I knew that my higher ankle was 23 centimetres. So really, I want my elastic to be 23 centimetres plus the 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. However, just wrap it around your ankle to check you're happy with that. While you're at it, you may as well cut 2 pieces, the same, one for each ankle. Okay, so let's get this elastic into the casing. The fabric I'm using today to sew the sweatpants is our Minerva Core Range Heavy Cotton Jersey Stretch Knit fabric. The colour I've picked here is warm green, but it comes in multiple colours. The composition is 92% cotton and 8% elastane, so really nice and stretchy. It has like approximately 45% stretch across the width and across the length, and it's 160 centimetres wide. It's a medium to heavy sort of weight of fabric. Once it's pulled through, we're then just going to take the safety pins off and attach the elastic together with a 1.5 centimetre overlap. I'm just going to use a zigzag stitch, just like that. Then tuck that elastic back into the casing, and then we're just going to stitch the remaining bit of the casing down to complete that loop. Okay, and there we have a really nice little cuff for our trouser hem. We can repeat that whole process for this side of the leg, and we can also repeat it for the top as well. Okay, so I've got the elastic in at the bottom for the pair of trousers on both legs now, and I've also sewn the casing down, leaving a hole up at the top up here. When we drafted our casing, we actually set the waistband below the natural waist. The natural waist is 5 centimetres higher. So what I would recommend is that you take a measurement from the back along here to the side seam, skip over that dart that we had there effectively, continue it along. So at this point, what the block is telling me is that I need 40 centimetres in total. If I take it from there and then skip across and go along that waist, 40 centimetres in total for half of my leg. So I'm going to need a piece of elastic that is 80 centimetres in total to work and to fit comfortably around my waist, because it's dropped down by 5 centimetres. Now, when we drafted the waist, we did draft it at 90% of our actual waist size. So that measurement that we've got here should be approximately 90% of the circumference of our waist at this point here. So that should work out really nicely. We shouldn't have to multiply the elastic by 0.9 again, because that's already been done on the block. So what I'd recommend is that you cut out a piece of elastic that is double the length of your block. So for me, that's 80. And then just wrap it around your waist at 5 centimetres below your natural waist and just check that it fits comfortably. Then once you've cut out your elastic and you're happy with its length, we'll then just thread it through the waistband exactly in the same way as we did for our hem. Just make sure you're keeping the elastic nice and flat as you thread it through. It's really easy to have it twisted, isn't it? Once you've got your elastic through, what I'd recommend is just pinning one to the other with your 1.5 centimetre overlap at that point, and then just go and try them on and check they work for you. Excellent. So in terms of drafting and sewing, you've basically done all that you need to do. We just need to thread our little drawstring through here, and then it's done. Just grab your drawstring and just thread it through in exactly the same way you did for your elastic. Perfect. Let's go and take a look at what those look like on. And here we have our jersey sweatpants. I really like the way they're all sort of combined really simply out of one leg, and the little cuff detail on the bottom and the casing, the elastic casing up at the top looks great. The drawstring just adds that really nice little detail to it. Brilliant. Okay, so that completes our little video all about how to create a pair of sweatpants bespoke to your body measurements. Next week, we'll continue this series to continue looking at our jersey block and how to create a range of different shapes using it. So thank you for joining me today. I've been Izzy at Minerva, and I'll see you next time.